Okay, good evening. I'm Brian Daniels. I'm Chairman of the Economic Development Housing and Zoning Committee. I'm going to call the public hearing to order. Tonight with me is Vice Chairman Bernay, Committee Member Iovana, Committee Member Lowell, Committee Member Rich, and then we have Councilor Kevin Scarpati, Mayor Santos, Councilor Castro. I have the City Manager, the Council Clerk. We have our Grants Administrator, we have our City Planner, and we have our City Economic Development Director. I have all the titles correct? All right. I apologize for the late start. We had a prior meeting that ran a little bit long, and I certainly appreciate everyone coming out with the weather today, but it seems to have held off and doesn't seem to be a problem at all, people getting down here. I'm going to call item number 2 of November 14th, 2013, which is a petition for a text amendment, zoning district R2, section 213-7B, definitions, community building, and section 213-19C, accessory use in the R2 zone. Mr. Crusoe.
Mr. Chairman, I do have one piece of correspondence that was relayed to us regarding this matter, if I may.
Yes.
The correspondence is from the Planning Commission, and it's addressed to the City Council. Honorable council members, the Meriden Planning Commission at its special meeting of December 30th, 2013, voted to recommend that the council, acting in its capacity as zoning authority for the city, approve the petition of the Meriden Housing Authority to amend sections 213-7B definitions and section 213-19 accessory uses in R2 zone. The recommended amendments submitted to the Planning Commission on December 26, 2013, see attached. There are some changes to the Planning Commission's recommendation than was originally submitted, and I'll explain those. Provide a definition of community building, and 2, allow a community building as an accessory use to a sizable 75-unit minimum or at least 20 acres housing development in the R2 zone. In making this recommendation, the Commission finds the petition in conformance with the Plan of Conservation and Development and has signed Enrico Buccelli, Chairman of the Planning Commission. That's the only piece of correspondence I have, Mr. Chairman, on this matter.
And the only thing I have in addition to that before we take the public comment is the legal notice. The Economic Development, Housing, and Zoning Committee of the Meriden City Council will hold a special public hearing on Thursday, January 2nd, 2014 at 6 p.m. at City Hall in the City Council Chambers, room 206, 142 East Main Street, Meriden, Connecticut. The following. Number 1, item 2 of 11-14-13, petition for text amendment, zoning district R2, section 213-7B. Definitions, community building, in section 213-19C, accessory use in the R2 zone. At this hearing, all interested parties may appear and be heard, and written communication will be received. Text of the resolution is on file for public review in the City Clerk's office, room 214, City Hall, signed by BDN's Chairman. It was published on December 20th and December 27th, 2013. Having nothing else from staff to go into the record, I'm going to ask if people wish to speak during the public hearing. Just make sure that the microphone has the green light on.
I see a green light.
You got it. You're
Happy
live.
New Year to everybody. My name is Thomas Fitzgibbons. I live at 46 Horgan Drive, Meriden, Connecticut. The change in zoning for building size and use is all about who gets what, where, and how. The what is a 25,000 square foot building. The where is at a public housing property. The when is as soon as it can be gotten through the City Council, and the how is for the benefit of the Meriden Y, who will administer it. The Chamberlain Heights project received funding from the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority, as well as state funds from the Department of Economic Development. The taxpayers, in some manner, paid the bill for this funding. Connecticut is ranked 42nd for favorable state business tax climate. TopRetirements.com ranked Connecticut the worst state to retire to because of its higher property taxes, income taxes, and the cost of living. Zoning is supposed to protect the people who have purchased homes in a particular area of town. They pay their federal, local, and state taxes from January 1 to almost the end of May. They only get to keep half a year's earnings. All these homeowners surrounding Yale Acres will not be able to use the facility they've paid for in federal and state taxes. If they want to exercise, they have to pay fees to private exercise clubs or join the Meriden Y. Federal money and state money is not free like a lot of people think. The proposal sounds like a gated community, which is usually paid for with private funds. What if the typical family spent money like the federal government and state government? This is a Heritage Foundation statistic. The median family income in the United States is $52,000. If they spent money like the federal government, they would spend $64,000 a year, which means they would put $12,000 on a credit card every year, despite already being $312,000 in debt. I know that the Meriden Y took in close to $1,900 in 2009 from program fees, membership fees, and facility rental fees. They took in government grants worth $987,290. Those grants come from people who pay taxes from January to most of May. How are private-owned health clubs supposed to compete with the Meriden Y? Why is Meriden considering having the Y be the administrator of the proposed facility? Meriden cannot afford this language change in its zoning, and if Yale Acres needs to be repaired, it should be done in a much less expensive manner that is being proposed. And I'm basing this on the article that was in the newspaper regarding the proposed project. I just happened to read it. So I may be in error in part of it, but I only go from what I saw in the paper. So thank you very much for your kind attention.
Attorney Senaviva.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of your committee, Mr. Mayor. A couple things. I'm going to just quickly respond to my good friend Tom about the monies, just for clarity purposes. It is, the proposal tonight, of course, is a text amendment, and the text amendment would relate to the entire R2 zone. The petition, of course, is the Meriden Housing Authority, and my client, the Executive Director, Rob Capoletti, is here also to speak this evening, should this body have any questions. But should this be passed, and should the Meriden Housing Authority move forward with a plan to develop a community building, it would be built by private monies. And so all the monies that actually going into the Yale Acres rehabilitation are private funds, and there'd be private funds for the community building. Also, just as an aside, you'll note in the language that Mr. Caruso and I helped craft for this text amendment, there is some capacity for people other than members of a housing development to use the building. It does say primarily for members of the community in which it's located, excuse me, but there also are some sorts of, or proposed programs might end up existing in this particular building that might be available to other members of the community based upon the sort of program that's being proposed. And I'll give you a good example, I think one that was given to the Planning Commission. If one of the prospective uses for this community building would be child care or daycare programs. And yes, they'd be geared primarily to the residents of a particular housing community, but if there were openings above and beyond the members of that particular community would be open to the public, and again, operated, by the way, at least as to our proposal, be operated by a not-for-profit enterprise. So this is not a commercial venture. This is not a for-profit operation. It's not commercial in that sense, and that's why it's not being proposed for a commercial zone. It might already be approved in a commercial zone. But this is an accessory building. The proposal is, again, that this use be permitted as an accessory use in the R2 zone. And you'll note from the language that has been amended based upon discussions with your planner, it does limit the sorts of opportunities for owners to develop a community building, although certainly you can assemble or assemble 20 acres or more, or develop a condominium development or some other development of 75 units or more, but they would have to be under one common ownership. And in that instance, you'd have the ability, should this language be passed, to construct a community building. Now again, I don't want to be naive, or certainly not fully disclose to this body what the whole plan from the Meriden Housing Authority is. The text amendment is the first step in that process. Should the text amendment be approved, there then would be an opportunity for the Housing Authority to come back to your Planning Commission with a presentation for a community building. Rob is here, and he has a picture of a proposal what's being proposed for this location. Again, it's still an idea. It's an $11 million idea that would provide some great benefits for the community. But this is step one, and again, this is the text amendment. You'll note from the language that has changed from the original petition, our original submission. In talking with Dominic, we talked about making certain that the operation was owned and operated by a not-for-profit, again, to take the commercial nature out of it, to make sure that any of the programs that are operated within the community building are operated by a not-for-profit, again, so that there isn't any commercial nature to the operation, and that there be no leases. Again, and Rob can explain that the Housing Authority is not permitted to have leases on its properties and would not do so. The funding really would be paid by the savings, the savings that'll come from the whole geothermal community nature of this new development. And while I don't profess to be an expert on those fuel savings, I guess the expectation is that they're going to be significant. The units, the rehabilitation of the units at Yale Acres has already been approved by your Planning Commission. It's really, I think, going to be really terrific. Chamberlain Heights did come out, I thought, pretty nicely. I was not involved in that project, but this one does look pretty exciting. So the proposal is here to amend the text to allow a community building as an accessory use in the R2 zone, but in limited circumstances, and it's limited as set forth in the draft that's before you. So the language, again, is designed to make certain that this is not in any way, shape, or form a commercial enterprise, but it remains a community facility that provides a benefit to the, primarily to the residents of the community in which it's located, the housing community in which it's located, but also to the city at large, particularly in those rare, hopefully very rare emergency situations where you might need a warming center or a cooling center depending on storm events. Hopefully we're not having one tonight. So it's, it really is a very exciting idea. I'd like to have Rob just say a few words, please, about how the Housing Authority came to this idea, and maybe he can just address some comments to the plan that's before you.
Thank you. Robert Capoletti from the Meriden Housing Authority, 22 Church Street, Meriden. Thank you for allowing me to speak, committee, mayor. The Yale Acres development is a state, originally a state-developed property. The funding from that was raised by the rents from the residents. So there's no taxpayer dollars in those programs. There's no subsidy, so to speak. There aren't loans or grants that are not tied to private dollars. So the rents that are raised there run the project, like any landowner. I wanted to make that clear because there's a lot of confusion about affordable housing or low-income housing that the Housing Authority does. This is workforce housing. Everybody has to work there to raise enough money to pay the rents there. The reason why we are building the community center was to offer one more amenity for our residents as we improve the quality of our projects. This amenity will have some services in there like a daycare, like a small gym, but probably not like the gym that you would go pay a membership for. This is more like what you'd see in someone's large basement. You know, it'd have a few pieces of equipment, maybe a bike, a Versa climber, something like that, but it would be maybe a 10 by 12 type of room where you just have a few things in there. I know some of the rumors out there are claiming that this is a huge building. It's a larger building because of basketball court, which we put indoor, so that it wouldn't disturb neighbors when kids are outside playing. Now it's indoor, so it doesn't bother folks. And the pool, the reason for the pool is because in the energy savings program that we've created, a byproduct of the energy improvements is a heat. The heat needs to be used for something, and it creates hot water. We'll heat the pool, and we'll use the pool for other energy improvements. The water in the pool will cool or heat the equipment that we're going to be using. That'll create a net zero property. The property will run on its own electricity and own heat and own hot water. What I'd like to explain is a little bit about the site view. I don't know if you could apologize for that. It looks a lot bigger in my office. But basically what you see is a proposed plan.
Rob, can you just grab a microphone next to you and hit the green light, speak into that? There you go. Thank you.
What you see is a proposed building. It's a two-story building from the street level. And on the backside facing the woods, it'll be another half level. So it's basically like a walkout basement in the back. And again, this is only proposed. We don't have the funding for this yet, so we're going to have to try to raise that through the energy dollars, and we're working with an energy company to do that. And it's simply, this is the ground level on the back end. So you can see the basketball court is actually the biggest part of the building, and you have some small facilities here, and this part is a residential building, because we're knocking down some of the residential buildings. So all this is a residential piece. So it's really only that part of the building, not very large. And then if you look at the really first floor from the street, you're going to see just the two infant and toddler rooms, bathrooms, a couple meeting rooms that are small, and then a kitchen area for education and training and healthy living programs. And then again, the rest, residential. So it's not very large when you look at it from the street level. And what you'll see from the street, 120 feet back or so, is a two-story large home. It looks like a traditional colonial-style home. So I hope that answers a lot of the questions that folks had about the size and capacity of this. Again, we don't have the funding for it, so we're working on that. These things usually take about 2 years to gather all the pieces, and it's all part of the bigger redevelopment of Yale Acres. Again, it's workforce housing. There's no subsidies on this property.
Mr. Crusoe? We generally don't do questions during the public hearing. Is there something that's not in your record that you need to hear?
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify, you said the gym is 10 by 12?
Not the gym, the workout, where the workout equipment would be. The basketball court, which would be the, whatever you call the basketball court, that's a regular-sized basketball court. And there's, what we sort of put in there is a space that you can kind of pull out a couple benches to sit on. So it's not really, you're not going to have a crowd in there. It's not large enough for that.
Thank you, Mr. Kabalay.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak? Mr. Bramian?
Good evening and Happy New Year to all of you. I would like to,
I'm sorry, could you state your full name and address for the record before we start?
sorry, I thought you mentioned my name. Bijan Paramian. My address is 218 Metacomet Drive in Meriden. I have to congratulate Mr. Cappelletti to what he's contributing really to our community by creating a center, community center, for highly dense residential project. Some of you around this room, when I look around from the old-timers' point of view, would realize that this concept, although it's excellent in terms of city planning, urban design, is nothing new in Meriden. We had it 40 years ago. If you remember Meeting House Village, we approved that project in form of PUD, Plan Unit Development. Part of PUD was to create a community center with a little bit of touch of commercial. So the concept is excellent. I wish this concept would be extended to other cluster or high-density residential area throughout our municipality. I do not see the regulation or amendment to our zoning regulation that is being made here tonight being done in a fashion that it applies to our entire municipality. It is tailor-made for this one project. And that's what is disturbing to me. I made it very clear, concept is excellent. The way it's being applied is discriminatory. It creates problem, legal problem, and implementation problem
in future for all of us. I would like to clarify that tonight. Take a look at some of the numbers which was altered last minute. For instance, the 10-acre site minimum, which I believe was increased to 20-acre, if I'm not mistaken, or 40-unit minimum, which was increased to 60 or 70 unit. The issue I have is look at the top of the line on a community building description. Building which cannot be more than 25,000 square feet. Well, looks like some client, some individual had certain building in mind. They want to put it somewhere in our municipality. Square footage is fixed. So let's pick up this location to put it in. That's not the way we write a regulation which affects in a comprehensive fashion the entire municipality. Let me give you an example. Good proportion, you create community center facility in proportion to the number of residential unit or in proportion to number of square footage. The higher number, the higher square footage, the bigger the size of a community center room or facility. That is called proportionate design. So you don't write a regulation for one client. You write a regulation for conceptual plan of a municipality, which is supposed to be done in an orderly fashion and in a comprehensive way. Look at the size. Well, first we said it should be 10 acre. Okay, now we can increase it to 20 or 30 acre. That's highly judgmental because remember my first formula, community center is excellent because it serves the number of the unit, technically number of people who are living in a condensed area and they need a community center for a variety of facility which is mentioned. Okay? What about instead of 40, which is now increased to 60 or 70, let's say 400. So we have 400 unit. What should be the size of the community center? We already said the size is 25,000 square feet. So there's non-proportion exists here. You're increasing the total number of unit, but you're not increasing community facility size. That is improper zoning regulation. That sounds like somebody wants to put a building of 25,000, all power to them, somewhere in Meriden, and we are trying to fine-tune or adjust our zoning regulation to facilitate that individual. Again, I have nothing about housing authority, and I congratulate Mr. Caponelli for coming forward and create such facility. But creation of such facilities should be uniform and non-discriminatory throughout our municipality. Let me give you one example, and I ask 8 or 9 of you councilmen, tomorrow if it's too cold, maybe Saturday or Sunday, go and visit. The number that I mentioned, 400, 500, 600, we have it in 4 towers downtown. Carabetta Towers. They're not concentrated in 21 acre or 28 acre or 10 acre. They go vertically up. That doesn't change the character and density of residential unit. You still have 400, 500, 600 unit. So in proportion to that, you need to have a community center. I'm not here tonight to represent Mr. Carabetta, or I speak on his behalf. I'm here to say that discriminatory act was performed here, that you should check it. Those towers, which consist 400 to 600 units, look directly south of them as a huge building. Some of you remember the boiler house of old factory, sitting vacant. On 8 consecutive occasions, Mr. Carabetta has written to City Council and City Manager, I have this 600 unit. I need a community center building. Can I use this? Can I take it at my own expense and create a community center? Answer, no. That's discriminatory planning. That should stop in this municipality. As we are trying to progress through housing authority to create this kind of asset in our community, we should extend it throughout the whole neighborhood, throughout the whole municipality, with appropriate proportion. You cannot come and say, the size maximum should be 25,000. That's irrelevant. 25,000 for what? For 600 unit? 70 unit? 40 unit? Totally irrelevant. Next one is, definitely I do not agree with the acreage situation. Acreage is representative of what? Total amount of land. Well, that turned out to be totally irrelevant when the greenest community in the United States was labeled in 2013, and probably 90% of you don't know which community is that. The greenest. Downtown Manhattan. Why? Because residential units, housing units, other facilities, they go straight up. And they utilize the least amount of land possible. So if Carabetta or anybody else wants to put 600 unit, high rise, 16-story high, on 2 acre, are you telling me as a councilman, those 600 people that you should multiply by 2.5 for population, so you get about 1,500, those 1,500 people living in high rises, they do not deserve community center facility? That's discriminatory zoning. What is good for one should be good for all. As I said, and I repeat it again, concept is excellent, but it does not apply uniformly throughout our municipality. And that's what we need to practice, even-handedness. So I would ask respectfully, through the chairman and other members such as the mayor and manager, to support this kind of creation of community center, yet eliminate those discriminatory elements within it, so it would be applied uniformly throughout our municipality. I can look around and see probably 2 individuals sitting in this room who remember what happened when we proposed interstate highway design zoning. You remember the Hall Farm? We proposed creating a new zoning for that area. In a process, the idea was whatever property we find which has certain number of frontage on an interstate, that qualifies for that zone change. Well, that was excellent, except the way we wrote it, we tried to discriminate against 2 other developers who had sufficient frontage on the highway, yet preventing them from entering this kind of zoning regulation. If you want to have this municipality develop in an orderly fashion, comprehensive fashion, and fair and equitable to all of our citizens and developers, you have to write a regulation in a way that appearance of impropriety is not exhibited within the regulation. Remember, the appearance of impropriety is the most important element that not only encouraged by our state, but by our federal government. I see that appearance of impropriety the way the regulation is written. I would ask this regulation to be remanded. If the job of your committee, through the chairman, is to work on it via the planning commission and its staff, let it be that way. Please, keep the good concept. Eliminate the discriminatory elements within it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Bramian. Does anyone else wish to speak? Does anyone else wish to speak?
Chairman?
Yes. I'm going to have to get a clarification on that. Generally, I mean, city officials can't appear in front of boards and commissions of the city on behalf of causes. You're free to do it, but you're going to do it at your own risk. I'm just letting you know there's provisions in the Code of Ethics on that. So I'm not saying whether they apply or don't, but you're doing that at your own peril if they do apply.
Part of any zoning activity, it's like that was saying.
No, I can't vote on it.
I don't have the Code of Ethics with me, but it's generally that any public official can't appear in front of any board or commission of the city on behalf of anybody. That's the general gist of it. I'm not giving any advice on it. I'm just letting you know there's some provision like that, and so.
Okay. I'll accept that, Chairman.
I mean, you'll certainly, when it comes to the city council floor, we'll be able to, even though you can't vote on it, you can certainly speak on it, right? Mr. City Manager, the mayor is not prohibited from speaking on zoning matters, but he just can't vote on them, correct? Is that okay, Mayor Santos?
Certainly is.
Okay.
Thank you.
Does anybody else wish to speak? Anyone else wish to speak?
I do have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Public hearings just for statements to the committee, so it's not questions. It's not question and answer. And you've already spoken, Mr. Bramian.
The clarification, Mr. Chairman, is I noticed that individual was going to make a statement and he was prevented from doing so. Question,
Who are you identifying?
is that individual was here in a capacity of a Meriden citizen or mayor?
Who are you identifying was prohibited from speaking? No one was prohibited from speaking.
If Manny Santos, as the citizens of Meriden, have anything to say, public like to hear it. This is the public.
Are you representing Mr. Santos?
I am
Mr.
Meriden
Santos is
citizen.
free to speak, and it's Mayor Santos. He is free to speak. I did not prohibit him from speaking. I merely advised him that there might be some issues with it, and it was his choice whether he spoke or not. So the record is absolutely clear. He is not prohibited by the chair of this committee from speaking.
Am I assuming you're acting as a corporation counsel tonight?
Mr. Bramian, you've had your public hearing. I'm speaking as the chair of this committee. I am trying to help people not make missteps. They are
Chairman,
their
may I?
choices. Mr. Mayor Santos.
Mr. Baramian, Chairman Daniels suggested that I take heed on the, or that I be aware of the Code of Ethics, so I'm going to take that into consideration. That is why I'm not going to speak tonight.
I have no problem with that. The only question I had was,
Thank you.
is he acting as a corporation counsel here tonight?
No. He clearly said I could still do it, but I'm choosing not to at this point.
Okay, so he's not the corporation counsel nor parliamentarian here tonight.
No.
Thank you for your explanation, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Does anyone else wish to speak? Anyone else wish to speak? Okay, I would just note before I close the public hearing that this public hearing was being recorded. It is going to be uploaded to an internet link, which will be emailed, I believe, tomorrow to the council clerk, who will then forward that email to the entire city council, so that any city councilors who chose or could not otherwise be here tonight will have the full opportunity to review the entire public hearing prior to this matter being on the city council floor next Monday at the 6:30 city council meeting on January 6th. Going once, going twice, public hearing's closed.